Music from what's his name on
Hey, we're
Sound.
live.
Oh, okay. Surprise me.
Oh, wow. That'll catch you off guard. I don't think you're ready for this show, are you?
Me? I'm a little nervous.
You're nervous about this show? I am equally nervous about this show.
This show is like dynamite and nitroglycerin and a poison pill all wrapped up into a nice little bonbon.
You don't want to add in some Zyklon B to that mix, do you?
How about two springs that pierce your cheeks?
I'll give you a bar of soap and just send you in. Never mind. Oh, wow. So, we're going to get ourselves in trouble today. I'm going to try not to. But first, let me say hello to the chat. Thank you, Denny Crane. And who else? Why can't I ever think? There was somebody else. Pink Salmon. And
Pink Salmon.
Gavin, yourself for joining us early before the show. Now that the show has begun.
Don't forget TA.
Hello, Paige. I will rule the world.
Oh, God.
So,
let's see. Where did this start?
I think it started in 1889.
No.
There was a newspaper article that was published somewhere, and I forget the exact specifications about the newspaper article.
Oh, I was on the interwebs, and I was talking to somebody, and they had an interesting perspective.
Hello, Midnight Raven. Welcome.
Hey, TA. Hey, Midnight Raven. Hey, Denny Craig. Hey, Pink Salmon. Pink Salmon. Anyways, they had a very interesting perspective. They were European, or they are European, and she was talking about today's facts, and then went back into history to all the way back to World War One. And when I brought the whole convo to my friend Num here, because my mind was a little bit blown, he took that and ran with it. And
I run
after
fast.
a day or two, his mind was blown. So
it didn't even take that long. I started at about 5:15 this morning, I want to say.
And
I mean, Fox, welcome.
Were you surprised at all?
All right, so has anybody in this chat ever just stopped and randomly dug into something because they weren't sure? Well, it's not that I'm not sure, but let's look into it and get more information so that I can present it. We can look at it logically. But then when you go looking for information, you expect, for a historical standpoint, for the information to, for the most part, coincide, to be able to find statistics and numbers that you can use and credit. And then you dig for more information, or you look something up while you're trying to figure things out. Welcome, Red Feather. Welcome, Patrice.
How you doing, guys? Thanks for coming.
You start looking into the past and realize that, well, there's a set of numbers here, and they're close, but they don't match this set. And then there's another set of numbers, and then there's more information, and it doesn't match.
This stuff, okay.
I really don't want to beat around the bush. Funny. I'm almost willing to take...
We're beating around the bush.
I'm sorry, guys. This isn't intentional. Let's get right out there and say this and try to be nice about this. We were looking into the facts surrounding World War II. And when you look into the facts surrounding World War II, a very large part, introspectively, of World War II is the Holocaust. Whereas any account from Wikipedia or most places show just a dead number, 6 million people were brutally slain and killed in the Holocaust. And then you go looking at numbers of how many people lived here and how many people lived there, and what kind of war was this, and what happened, and when did this happen, and how did this happen, and where did these numbers come from? Because somebody says it's not true, so let's prove it is or isn't. Not going in believing or disbelieving, but going in looking objectively to see who's telling the truth and what can I believe. one of the big things that hits you when you dig into World War II and start asking questions is, one, what questions do you ask, and how far can you get until you hit a blocked page, a broken link, missing element of something, a restricted video that you can't get to, and when you do finally find it, you have to go through 3, okay, I'm old enough, okay, I understand what I'm watching, and then realize there's no other information because it's so restricted, all you can do is watch it.
Now, also, about that number, 6 million, would it surprise anyone in chat that that exact number, 6 million, has been used since, what was it, the turn of the century?
What was it, 1890 something?
1890s. The 6 million figure started with a book called War of the Worlds, actually. It was in the War of the Worlds. And after the War of the Worlds, there have been over 148 news articles from newspapers pointing to the figure of 6 million, the specific peoples, and how they are starving and in trouble, and they need our help. And these articles range from, like I said, before the 1900s all the way to 1945. So over 145 articles where the number 6 million is specifically said before even World War II. Interesting fact.
In reference to persecution of Jewish population. So
yes,
let's go over this. At a glance look at World War II, looking at the camps, the numbers, the census, the area, and everything else. So let me put this clearly, I'm not denying the Holocaust. I can, in looking at a lot of facts and information that I've seen, say 6 million people could have and most probably died in the fashion that is being illustrated. I can't say that they were all Jewish, because even the records I've read said mixed in with Jewish people were Catholics and other races or creeds that the German government under Hitler's rule didn't want in the country. And they weren't all sentenced to be killed either. So I can go with history. I can agree with it. Let me go through and agree with it and pull up the numbers from the 1930s, how many Jewish people there were, and the numbers from the 1940s, how many Jewish people there were. From different accounts, between 1930 and 1940, there was between 11 and 16 and a half, with 11 and a half, 14 and a half, 15 and a half, shy of 16, and just over 16. And I think there was even one saying somewhere around 17, as different numbers as to the pre-Holocaust Jewish
worldwide.
Worldwide.
Worldwide
numbers.
We're talking South America, Spain, Russia, United States, everywhere.
Now, I can agree that 6 million Jews died. When you add up the numbers in the areas where World War II took place, there were enough Jewish people in the area of World War II to have been killed in the number amounting to 6 million. So I'm not denying, not marking it down, not even going to cut that number back. Post-war, the counts range from 6 to 12 million Jewish people left around the world. So the before and after counts, depending on where you look, change drastically. So it's hard to give you an accurate depiction of how many people actually died. But if you stop and look at different areas, it's funny that we all look at Germany as being a terrible country, when it said in 1939 that roughly 500,000 Jewish people lived in Germany. And about the time of 1941, when they started rounding them up and putting them in quote-unquote execution camps, there was only 234,000 Jewish people left in Germany.
Far from 6 million.
But then again, that's just Germany. In Austria, there was another 2.6. In Russia, there was another 3.3 on the eastern side of Russia, near where the war was happening. And then another 3 million Jewish people, according to one set of numbers, another 3 million Jewish people in the western or Asian side of Russia. There was also apparently Jews in China and Australia at the time. I saved 12 links, but I unfortunately forgot to change my graphics driver over to share links, I think. So I'm trying to figure out how to do that. That's what I'm working on over here. But again, we're not denying that 6 million people may have died. We're not denying the Jews died. We're not denying that a large part of the war was derived at removing the Jewish people from Germany. So let's look at that for a moment, because I looked at that earlier this morning. And again, like the numbers between 1939 and 41 split in half. After the war, after World War I, which Hitler fought in, he sought to try and improve his government from the bad place that it was in. Again, I'm not on Hitler's side. He thought the country was suffering an economic struggle because people at the top were holding power over financial institutions. Through time, he felt the best way for him to do this was to work through the democratic government and find laws and information that would help him fight against what he felt was corruption in the government. January 30th, 1933, he was inaugurated, or however, Chancellor of Germany to assist with the financial goings-on, and he put forth laws that prevented Jewish people from controlling certain aspects of the government having to do with financial means. He started making it impossible for them to open businesses and have certain accounts and be able to do things, because he felt they were the reason the country was suffering the economic struggle. And at this time in Germany, as data will attribute, they were moving wheelbarrow loads of stacks of money to pay for a loaf of bread.
They had $1 million bills, multi-million-dollar bills. At that point, they stopped their central bank, their Federal Reserve, and they went to their own Reichmark, their own currency. They started from scratch. There was massive unemployment. There was poverty everywhere. People, like I said, were moving barrels of money to buy a loaf of bread. He got the nation from a collapsed state to a modern industrial society where there was a highway system, a rail system. Everybody was working. He wanted everybody to have a place to live, not an apartment, but a house with a garden. He wanted everybody to be able to buy a car, so he designed the Volkswagen with Porsche. He wanted everybody to have a vacation, so they had these not luxury, but they had these vacation trips, apartments and points along the sea and along lakes where
and he
they would
did
go.
This for his people. For some of his people, he sent word for people to move up to area that he had conquered and gave them houses that he took away. Again, I don't agree with what he did or how he did it. We're just going over this. At the same time, these are facts.
When you see the newsreels of the sea of people, and they are literally, it looks like the Beatles just landed, that isn't fear. They loved him. He literally took the nation from the brink and gave the people everything.
Okay. So at the same time all this started happening, though, what began to happen was the large institutive Jewish business makers were making agreements with foreign governments outside of Germany to aggressively push foreign influence on the market in Germany so that they would remove the laws and allow them to stay. What's funny, in 1918 or 1919, the German government had already decided that one thing that they needed to do was remove these people from their country. I can't find a lot of information about how they came to this conclusion, but before 1920, the German government had already, before Hitler, wanted to move the Jews to Madagascar. That was their solution. That was what they believed originally was the final solution, to give them an island off the coast that could be monitored and they could make sure that they're not in their way. That was the goal. That seemed realistic, except when you look into the island at the time, the island is unable to sustain what the German government wanted to do. The German government could not have sent 250 or 500,000 Jewish people to Madagascar to survive, because at current time it was uninhabitable by humans because of the thick, lush landscape and the well-known, still wild animal population on the island. So that was out of the question. It wasn't until 1941 where a verbal order, which is interesting and we'll get back to later, was given to start killing Jews.
Welcome, Whale. And yes, that's very funny, TA.
What did I miss? Madagascar. Didn't see the Jews in that movie. So to go back, this wasn't all necessarily Hitler's idea. He just pushed with what was going on and made it work and brought his country back, doing terrible things along the way, easily considered terrible things. But then there are sects that we are not going to cover tonight of people that believe that the gassings didn't actually happen because of chemical coloring that's not present on the wall in pictures from current time or even now. There's evidence of construction built after the fact. There's evidence that they didn't have enough fuel to burn bodies, and that the stories could have been manufactured because the time frames and the allowability of the circumstances just could not have happened. Even at best modern day standards, we can't do what people have said happened. Do we believe what they said happened? Yes, but maybe not necessarily how they described it, because witness accounts are not 100%.
Welcome, TC.
Welcome, TC. Welcome, I Hail the Whale. Sorry, guys. This is just, when you get digging into this topic, there's a lot that you don't learn. There's a lot that they don't tell you. There's a lot that's not written in history and that you actually have to go looking for.
I personally thought this was all written in stone. Like, there was no, you know, when I've seen and heard the word Holocaust denier, I mean, shit, I don't even want to say the friggin' words.
Right.
It drives me bananas because, you know, it's a given. But when you actually are reading the newspapers from 20 years before World War II, talking about 6 million, when you start analyzing that there were only 250,000 Jewish people in Germany at the time, and how many of those people converted to Catholicism, and how many left?
You're mixing articles. Hold on, you're mixing articles. I want to say it was the one we were reading from 1915. That was Germany and Austria were starving the Jewish citizens, 6 million Jewish citizens, which didn't exist at that time in that area. Then in 1919, there was an article, the first one from the Sun, I want to say June or July 6th, 1915, the Sun newspaper, New York City. The second one, I want to say also from the summer of July 1919 that 6 million Jews in Russia were being starved and persecuted. And then
Frank,
again, it happens 140 times before 1945.
I mean, Eric, Anne
Think
Frank
what you guys
real.
want of that. We're not going to say that it didn't happen.
Right.
When did the 6 million die is the question, because it appears 140 listable times. News articles that have been gone over in videos, which, by the way, most of them are in restricted mode. It's been gone over in articles, some of which have broken links that you cannot get back to cited sources. I'm not trying to contradict history. I'm adding in the rest of the information that we found, which will hopefully cause people to think a little bit. Welcome, Hawk Silk. Welcome, Eric Folms. How are you guys doing tonight?
You also have to remember that history is usually written by the winner.
That's true. There is a sect of people that believe,
and there's two sides to every story, and usually it's not either.
There's a sect of people that believe that when the Allied forces finally finished bombing the German reserves and went in, that those shops, because the Germans kept very good records of everything they were doing, how much they were moving, where they were moving it, when, how much it cost, what they needed, where they needed it. They ran over 1,000 facilities that they worked together.
IBM sold them pre-computers to keep track of all this information.
The Germans are said to have firebombed their own offices when they knew they were going down in different places. And it's also said that the Allies may have come in and found some of the stamps and kind of fudged paperwork. It's also said that when the Allies came in, them coming into some of the camps, the hostility when they came in, that people still died even after the Allied had come in and freed them, because some of them were already diseased and dying from the starvation and hunger that they were suffering.
There were 60,000 deaths after the Allies occupied the camps.
Oh,
that
deaths. Let's bring up the big fat number, because this is what really caught me. When I started researching World War II, my first questions were how many people died? Where did they die? Where were they from? 80 million people, 3% of the world's population died in World War II. According to all the information I can find, the best number I can get is around 80 million people died.
The 60,000 that died of disease. See, at the end of the world, when the Allies were bombing the hell out of Germany, and basically all transportation stopped, food couldn't get around. The camps were the first to feel it, and they didn't have any food. When you have starvation and you have a lack of infrastructure, then the disease starts forming, and plagues move fast through groups,
especially in weak populations,
especially tight populations. So
the feeding regimen for a prisoner at that time was, I think, 4 or 5 slices of bread, a certain amount. It was a liter of broth in the evening, a couple pieces of cracker, a couple pieces of meat, a couple pieces of cheese, and a half a liter of coffee in the morning. That was their ration for the day.
Not to mention the Red Cross. The Red Cross managed to put a box in every prisoner's hands weekly, I think it was, with extra perks and bonuses and foodstuffs and canned meat.
You're very right, but let me add to that. The Red Cross was able to do a lot because of a treaty that was signed after World War I called the Treaty of Versailles, and I don't have an exact date on it because I didn't look into it real hard. The Red Cross had the ability to go into the war-torn areas and act as Red Cross specifically there to help prisoners and people in need. They were allowed to take messages in and out on scribed paper of no more than 25 words from the prisoners in all German, Austrian, and Polish camps. The Red Cross, however, was not, at the time of the war, allowed to go into Russia or allowed to help Russian POWs in German custody. They were allowed to help everybody else the Germans let them because of the Treaty of Versailles. So the Red Cross was helping these people. And I'm still digging into accounts from the Red Cross. That's going to have to be a whole separate show on accounts of what are they called, NGOs now? What the Red Cross people went in there to do to help the people who were prisoners in camps at this time. It's amazing how much information you find out.
But it's also amazing how much information, even today, is blocked. I mean, I have to convince Num here to start using DuckDuckGoose because Google will...
DuckDuckGo, you said.
Well, huh? I'm sorry,
DuckDuckGoose.
DuckDuckGo, because Google will just shove the mainstream narrative down your throat over and over and over and over again.
I won't take that mainstream narrative. So we were searching through something that had the list of 140 items. There was a video linked at the bottom of the article that when you clicked on it, you go into it. The only way to get to it is via link. The only thing this video had for 22 minutes, Data and I watched 15 minutes of it, he went through 10 historic newspapers and read out 10 points in the papers, yellowed old papers from the early 1900s, where they accounted for where we were giving money interest-free because 6 million Jewish people here were being persecuted. 6 million Jewish people over here are being persecuted. 6 million Jewish people over here are being persecuted. And we need to loan 1 million, 15 million dollars without interest from the government to the Jewish people to help keep them from starving. And this repeats throughout history.
And when Num says here, it's like 6 million in Russia, 6 million
in Germany and Austria, and then 6 million over here.
Right. I mean, it's always a different place, and it's always the same exact number, and it's always they're starving, they're broke, they're homeless.
Persecuted.
You know, they're persecuted.
They're being persecuted and driven out of their homes because they're Jewish. And this is why I think, and I hope all of you guys here are hitting that up like button, and I hope some of you are saving some of my streams because I don't. I'm worried for this show and potentially my streaming for a couple of weeks or so. So just keep that in mind. We are trying to approach this in a very light-trodden way.
Why did TA delete a...
I don't know. I didn't catch that. Why are you deleting messages?
Why did you delete Steelbones TC200?
Is that what that is? I didn't catch that on here.
Why are you timing out Denny Cray? I don't understand.
I hope you guys are just playing games.
I use it, but I hate Google. Okay. And then, I mean, what's the problem here? I use that.
I use Google. The problem with Google is the more precise the information you want to find, it tells you, no, we'll auto-search for you. Don't let Google auto-search for you. Override the search algorithm by using old-fashioned search parameters when you type out your search. Colons and commas. And you'll get closer.
TA, why did you do that to Denny? There's nothing he said that was bad.
It's alright, I got this on this side. I'm working on it as soon as I get this thing to move. Denny's been around for a while. Even though he says he just subbed today, I don't believe him. I think he's been subbed for a while.
Yeah, but I mean, I just read all the messages. There's nothing he said that was, I
She
don't know.
says it was an accident. I'll take her at that.
Okay, okay. Sorry. No, don't leave, TA. Come on. It was an accident, like you said.
No, you're all right. TA.
Jeez,
Arnold.
everybody's so
Arnold,
touchy.
sit your governor butt down, Arnold. I will not take you leaving my stream. I don't think you can steal bones. There's no steal bones thing. You're talking about history. Why would you get a channel strike? I wish those morons and Paul's and other dude would get strikes. By the way, Logan Paul won the fight stupidly.
But isn't that crazy? I mean, here's a guy who had 10 different newspapers literally laying on his rug on the floor, yellowed, edges a little ripped and torn. I mean, and he's reading articles right out of them, and YouTube blocks his channel.
It's in restricted mode. The only way to get to it is with a link. Speaking of which, where is that link? Let's be terrible people. Where videos of papers from the 1900s, where the 6 million number appears. Right there. That's how I noted this link. We're going to copy.
So, yeah, I mean, this has been an odd little rabbit hole because, it started out with this conversation I had and a interesting European perspective. And basically, the person that I was talking to said, this whole thing it was blown out of proportion. And the reason it was blown out of proportion was because the head guy of Germany basically went against their Federal Reserve and their banking system that was putting the country into perpetual debt and gave their population the best of everything that the country could possibly provide itself. And because of that, he is now in history as a disgusting, slimy mass murderer. And you Americans, you came over and you bombed Germany into the ground and set it back 1,000 years, and you're going to have to live with that because now the entire world is in control by the same people that were controlling Germany. And yeah, you have a president now that is denying mass importation of multiculturalism, but at the same time you have a civil war brewing with PC culture and multiculturalism. And it's, what the real amazing thing is, what do they call Trump? What do they keep on calling Trump?
Orange Hitler.
It's like everybody that's against the narrative is Hitler, is a Nazi.
Yeah.
I mean, it's odd.
It's
really odd.
Granted, there are some things in there
She went on to say this. She said, if, for some reason, America throws off the shackles of debt slavery and we pull down the Fed and we pull down the IRS, you know what would happen? And I said, what? And he goes, NATO, the rest of the world would see you like everybody saw Germany, that the entire world would point their finger at the United States and say, this is the new National Socialism, the new Nazi country, and they would all attack you. And at the same time, you would have a civil war, and at the same time, you would have, since all your borders are practically wide open, you would have hundreds of thousands of soldiers running into your country, and there goes your your quote American dream of
Eric
freedom.
Holmes. I really want to encounter some of the things in chat because I was kind of thinking some people have their questions and doubts just like we now do. So there were only 12 million Jews in the world at the time that newspaper came out. For the first article in 1915, there was just shy, I want to say, of 12 million Jews. When the article came out, the 6 million were being persecuted in Germany and Austria. There was just over 2 million Jews in Germany and Austria in 1930s from one of the numbers I looked up. So how was there 6 million there? From the next article in that video, it goes to Russia. The only way you can find 6 million Jews in Russia is if you go across both Soviet social unions that were sort of interlocked up in the northern Asian and European continent, where it's strewn across that whole landmass. That's the only way.
Just so you know, Angry Amish Hitman, Num specifically went to the newspaper and looked up the archives and matched the stories and the pages one by one, just to make sure that these weren't fake yellowed newspapers. Just so you know.
Yeah. The article showed up on a digital copy, so it is available online. The newspaper, a news article, should be freely able to view. I don't know what copyright restrictions newspaper has or showing the newspaper on YouTube, but you would assume from, even if this video was put on YouTube in 2000, you're talking over 80 years. The newspaper has no rights to that information after that amount of time.
Listen, newspaper archives are informational. I mean, this is research. There's no reason or point to block informational research.
All right, so that brings up the next point that I just want to breeze over. Why is it such an issue to know about what actually happened? Why is it a problem to question the numbers, to look at the math, and to ask history what really happened and go, well, are you sure? I don't think it was that many people. Denier! Stone him! He's a denier!
Well, and remember the thing I brought up. Remember that black congressman who was driving in his car, and he started talking about how the Rothschilds control the weather. And this is kind of like a common theme in the conspiracy theory group, that the Rothschilds control the weather, and not only that, but they make money off of it because they can actually use the weather to their advantage.
Have we done HARP, or did we just do weather control?
I think we just did weather control. We didn't get specific.
It included HARP.
But anyways, long story short, he put this out on the web, and he got nailed. He got crucified. He was an he didn't even mention the word Jewish. He said Zionist Rothschild. And he was crucified. He had to apologize. He had to backpedal. I mean, for what? Since when are you not allowed to believe something?
When are you not allowed to question what happened? Reading a newspaper, albeit the newspaper is available. It's on sites. Maybe it's a copyright issue for archive sites if they're copyrighting the information that they've preserved, and YouTube can't show that. But that's the only way I can see, in which case, if it was copyrighted, it wouldn't be allowed at all. It wouldn't be put into a limited state, only accessible through a link.
Something else I'd like to point out, too. You know how when anybody talks about Islamists are a small fraction of Muslims.
Now you're going to get us killed, aren't you? Keep going.
Islamists are the small fraction that basically are working and fighting for a world dominated by Muslim religion. And if you do not join, you die. This is a very small but very powerful, evil,
influential
interpretation. In the same aspect, That's the, if you want, that is a good comparison to what Zionism and Judaism is. You have a small, powerful, wealthy contingent that is all about the state, the Jewish state, the governmental power, not the religious aspect. So
which is funny,
that's
because Judaism or Jewish is one of those things when you look up, it's the people. See, this is hard to explain. It's a people and a religion, kind of almost like Islam.
the crazy thing is Muslim religion, Judaism, and Catholicism are all three branches of the Abrahamic tradition. So, in other words, in actuality, they're all the same. They're all flavors of the same religion. They may not have the same books, but they're all flavors of the same family. They're like a big family table where you have, the crazy uncle, the grandma, and another uncle over here. That at one point they all came from the same parents. Hello?
I'm still here. I'm multitasking. Yeah, they're all Abrahamic religions. They sort of split and evolved about 3 millennia, 4 millennia ago, depending on how you want to look at history. Again, coming forward to your point, though, why does it feel like right now in America, when you try to say something about Islam and describe their religion from their text, explain it as they explain it, no, you're wrong. That's not how it is. You're interpreting it incorrectly.
Yeah, you're
Do
Islamophobic.
the same thing at history, and look at what history happened. Look at papers. Look at reports. Look at pictures. Look at information. Look at censuses and statistics. And you're a horrible person because you're questioning what we told you about history. Well, yeah, it's history. Aren't we supposed to look into it and know what happened? You just told me something. I'm just supposed to believe you? Yes! Don't look. We'll restrict your channel. We'll restrict your video.
Islamophobia, if you talk about any. And the crazy thing also is when we find a moderate Muslim, a religious scholar, and he talks about his religion and about the radicals in it, those are the ones that the mainstream turn into enemies. They're the ones who are kicked. They're the ones who are deplatformed. For some crazy reason, we're embracing the radicals and saying, "Oh, you can't talk about them." But when it comes to the moderates, they don't want to hear it.
Yeah. I don't have any problem with anybody. I'm just looking at information. If looking at information, discussing it, and bringing it to an audience is bad, well, how? I understand when I sold drugs to people that were illegal that I was breaking the law and that I would have to serve a sentence for it if I got caught.
No, you don't understand. The whole point is,
what do you mean I can't learn without getting in trouble?
No, the people, you got to understand, the population's dumb. You can't give them facts. You have to tell them what to think. That's what the lady on CNN says. Her job is to tell the population how to think.
Yeah, we're better than you. We can get our hands on this information legally. So can we, you morons. But that's okay. You guys can think. Look into the information. I have a list of links that I haven't shared because I was trying to pull them up on the screen and apparently forgot to change my card settings because it won't pull it up on the screen. All sorts of things from Hitler's, what do you call it? Goodbye letter? His, will. Something
he wrote out his will, and basically they call it a suicide letter. There's also another letter you might want to peruse, and that's, you remember General Patton? Well, after the war, Patton wrote his wife and said, "Honey, we were on the wrong side." And not too long after, he was killed. Or they say he died in the hospital after a car accident, but the car accident was really a not serious car accident, and he was a damn powerful, strong man. So yeah, all of a sudden he died when he started talking about how they were on the wrong side. So it is odd. It is odd to the extreme.
You know, something Data and I were just grazing on. Weird coincidence. Germany in the 1920s into the 1930s was working towards a democratic, freer society. And Hitler even used this democracy to his advantage. America at the time, especially fighting the First World War, would have supported any democracy growing anywhere around the world to fight against another war. Funny thing is, we fought against the Germans, didn't we? Wouldn't we have supported a democracy? But I guess it wasn't really a democracy when he took over and started killing people. So how do you want to look at that?
How do you want to look?
Would we have supported him until he pushed the agenda to get rid of the Jewish people?
How do you want to look at carpet bombing Dresden and Hamburg? I mean, these were cities. Could you imagine another country carpet bombing New York and Chicago?
Of course, this is at the same time. 1929 is when our stock market dropped and we went into a depression, so we weren't really in much of a place to be on anybody's side.
Well, the only reason we got into World War II was the Japanese bombing of Pearl Harbor, and now we are told that we knew about it beforehand, that it was actually let happen so our population...
That's a whole nother episode.
I'm just tickling the key that you know, that's what got us into the war, because we were very neutral. We didn't really... It was over there. It was over there. It wasn't here.
Yeah, it wasn't our part to be in. Before the war, though, we may have been part of helping the Germans rebuild until we struggled and fell.
And you know, to be honest, Germany still, to this day, is the financial engine of Europe. I mean, you know...
I do want to throw a bunch of things at the viewers, because there are things that we are not going to talk about tonight. These things will include, but not be limited to, Zyklon B. And whenever you do a search for this, you will only come up with World War II. You won't come up with the fact that it was a chemical that was, from one report, established in the 1880s from the Western America, roughly California. It's a what do you call it? An insecticide. There's another report that says it was started in the 1920s by the Germans.
Chat. Denny, you're right. We were, at that point, we were completely isolationist. And it looks like Patrice has something for you.
A link. Oh, that's right. I can't do anything from that chat. And I was scrolling over here to see what happened between Denny and TA earlier. Because I don't like upset viewers. I don't want to cause problems with viewers. I want to cause problems with YouTube. I mean, I don't want to cause problems with anybody.
Right. What timestamp was that, by the way? Do you see the time?
44:52 out of an 8-hour.
7:44:52. Let's see.
Is this in Chinese?
Sorry.
Was that you or me? Because it played on my side too.
that was you.
All right. So in addition to Zyklon B, 744:52. In addition to Zyklon B, which was one of the chemicals used in gassing, according to reports, carbon monoxide was another chemical used in gassing. Please look into those reports. They're going to be hard to find. I can mention the Zyklon B when it burns off, or when it's used, when it emits the gas, leaves a blue tone on the wall, and that can't be accounted for in some of the places it's said to have been used. Also
Right.
look into fuel deliveries to different camps during that time and the fuel
Right.
burn ratios for cremation of bodies. It doesn't add up to getting rid of the number of people they're said to have gotten rid of.
Right. I mean, we're talking about industrial scale. I mean, we're talking about backhoes. I mean, hell, it takes 5 hours to burn a body to ash.
Does anybody live in the north during the cold time of year? Poland, cold, half the year, 10 degrees Celsius, average temperature for half the year, or colder. Yeah.
How do you
Dig in
dig?
that.
How do you dig ditches to bury bodies when the ground's frozen?
How do you burn bodies in a pit when... Look it up, guys. I can't give you too many details because they will flag me for the details on some of it. Look into things. I'm not telling you what to believe or what not to believe. That's not what Numbed Wasteland is about. What we do is we try to really dig into things and take all that we know about it, try to tell you some of it, and if you really want to think about this, all you have to do is look. It's not easy, but you gotta look.
Let's just say if it didn't pan out, we wouldn't be talking about it.
Yeah, well, we might have mentioned it and just gone, oh, well, this is what happened. I think we would have been done at about the 15-minute mark, and we'd be doing jokes and games by now.
But yeah, it was odd. It kind of blew my mind. Seeing it from, after the conversation, seeing it from this European girl's perspective, it really kind of blew my mind. And then when you take into account what our president is being called right now, and what the people are being called that are kind of against this national movement, basically, I could see her point.
This is my thought. This is the biggest thing I got. Why the title is 80 million people dead. If 80 million people died from dozens of countries around the world, more than a quarter of them being Japanese and Chinese. If 80 million people died, what's wrong with questioning the numbers to ask about 6 million? Less than a tenth.
And why is
that? Why? Yeah, what you're about to say. Why is that 6 million so damn important?
So much more important than the rest.
Not demeaning the 6 million, not denying the 6 million.
Not at all.
It's not about the number. Why is that number so important?
Why is that number like drilled into our head? Why? What is it? And the strange thing, like I said, this 6 million number comes up over and over and over again in 148 articles for almost 75 years before World War II. Always pointing to another location with the same number and another location with the same number.
I didn't say 20 million Chinese, did I? I thought I said Japanese and Chinese. Mostly Japanese. It was just over or somewhere around 20 million Japanese people, and Chinese people were enough of a number that I kind of lumped the two Asians together. Sorry, Asians.
There were two royal families that were against the bankers, and one of them was the German that was killed, and that started World War I, and the other was the Russian royal family, and you know what happened to them. It seems like anybody. What about arresting a Rothschild?
Which was done in Germany in 1940?
An actual
kickoff of killing the Jews.
An actual Rothschild was arrested, if you could believe that, in 1940. And look what happened to the country that did it. And you know who the next country was that was trying to arrest a Rothschild? Libya.
All right. So again, let's put this in a context for people to understand. Let's say there's 100 people in a room. All right? That whole room dies. All of them. 8 people in the corner were left-handed. They killed all the left-handed people in that room.
You're a mass murderer of left-handed people, Numbskull.
But what about the 100 people? The left-handed people are dead. But maybe there was only 7 of them. How dare you? They were left-handed.
You rounded up those left-handed people and put them in that room to kill them.
Okay, well, that's changing the numbers I was trying to use to associate the complex there. This is the 80 million versus the 6 million, not the 1.1 versus 1.3 for a 2.5-year term with 4 buildings when they had to walk 3 miles every day.
Stop!
No. Left-handed lives matter.
So yeah, I mean...
This is what I'm talking about, though. A lot of people died. Americans, British, French, Japanese, Chinese, Russians, Germans, Polish, Jewish, Slovakian.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter who or where you were from. 80 million people died. Why? Why is 10% more significant than the rest of the 80 million? I never even thought that number was that large. From what I learned in history, I thought it was, 6 million Jewish died. So like 10 million people died. Most of them were Jewish, right? No, 80 million people died. Less than 10% were Jewish.
Yeah. It's amazing what we've been taught over our lifetimes.
They are not rare. Versus other religions, yes, potentially rare. At their point, depending on what you read, at their highest peak, at 17 point something million, I think was the highest I read. That ratio gave them 0.7% of the population. I hailed the whale. Thank you for $10 in the jar. Just cuz.
Just
cuz. I appreciate cuz.
The rarity of a type of person to another type of person, what does that have? If they're all dead, it doesn't matter how rare.
And it's funny, there's 11 billion people. Or was it 17? I'll have to look again because it's important for a skeleton. There's like 11 billion people dead.
11?
Maybe
billion?
It's a lot more. Maybe it's 7. Maybe it is 17. Maybe I was reading a bad number.
Billion?
Maybe I'm not adding enough zeros. I don't know. There's a lot more people dead than that are alive right now. Why are we concerned over a small portion of a large number that died a huge amount of time ago? Why are links and shows and channels hard to get into or not there? Because they discussed.
Why are the numbers so fluid? Why is a specific number coming up over and over and over again over almost 100 years?
Where did I have to save that? I forget what happened. I have.
Why is it
from a Jewish databank?
Yeah.
I have the 1927-28 numbers from the Jewish databank that says there was only roughly 14.7 million Jewish people on the planet in 1927. So it's feasible that there was about 16 or 17 afterwards. Post-war, after 6 million had died, there was 11 or 12. They're claiming that in the first 2 decades, they gained 1 million. In the following 47 years, they gained another 1 million. So 57 years following, I believe the report was from somewhere in 04 or 05, that the Jewish population was back up around 13 to 14 million. The numbers seem reasonable. They seem accurate. The discrepancy is small enough in such a large number that I can discount it to error until you find different numbers for the same period of time in the same areas. So how can you say the world population in an overall map breaking down geographical location is 15, but then a government census says it's 17 worldwide, but then the Jewish census just a few years ago says that no, there's not enough to have been 17. And then there's back to what Data and I have sort of alluded at, If there's 140 instances of 6 million people being persecuted from 1890 to 1945, it took an awful long time for 6 million people to be persecuted to death.
Not to mention the literally hundreds of millions of dollars that were collected for it.
Yeah. Interest free, mind you. Let's just give them money.
You know, $1 million in 1919 is like $14 million in today's money. So, just so you know.
So hopefully, because when I started this morning, and this is how I do a deep dive. What can I find in a few hours? And when I dive, I read some interesting stuff. I have in here how many Jews were in Germany in 1939, in 1941, in 1933. I have this thing called the NumbedSkull Project, which I believe is examining another war that happened in the 1970s and the 2 million people that died in that war of a specific division of people, and comparing it to what had happened in World War II to say that, okay, look, it's historically accurate that this does happen. I have historical records of the uprise from historyplace.com of the rise of Adolf Hitler. I have news article from Daily Express, but I found this article several times. It's one of the 140 instances of an appearance of the 6 million number. Comparing wars, that was something else. Populations and the 1951 world meters population, which I will try and put another one or two of these in chat here as we wrap up today. Do you have anything else for the fine folks that stayed and joined us through this horror?
You know, I guess on the final note, you know, I'm Catholic. I haven't been to church in a long time. I haven't been to confession in a long time. I'm kind of an atheist. I mean, if there is something out there, you know, I doubt it's a guy watching the television show called The Earth. But I'm kind of worried that a few people that are in control of a lot of the countries around the world do believe in a Satan and are satanic, and with most of the population becoming more and more atheists and walking away from religion, at least the good side, and you have a fixed small contingent of Satanists, do we have something to worry about in the future?
A lot to worry about in the future.
Then he says God probably has at least 20 channels.
But I can't find them on the internet. All right, here are a whole bunch of links, guys. Collect what you want to collect. Check out what you want to check out. If you're not interested, okay. I am looking for... I will make sure you guys get this one right here. This one right here has an unusable link to a 21-minute and something video that I linked earlier in the chat. So
also guys, I suggest not using Google or Internet Explorer or Bing to search. I would suggest using DuckDuckGo, because I think your results will be a little less manipulated. And you know, go at this with an open mind. I mean, that's what we did.
And I will be watching my channel for the next hour to see what happens, everybody. Hopefully everything goes well, and maybe I'll just get another little WikiLink tab depending on what it picked up on. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Tomorrow night is tomorrow it's time to be colorful.
Wish Num good luck, because I would really hate to see his channel cratered by YouTube and Google. Yeah, thank you very much for spending your Saturday evening with us, and hopefully we will see you next week. same bat time, same bat channel, and have a great day or a great
Thank you,
night.
everybody.
Great weekend.
I have no outro. I'm working on some new stuff. That's why everything seems blank. But you'll join us later. Make sure to play with my buttons, everybody. Thank you and good night.
We could sing something.